Hello everyone. In this video, I will be talking about the third learning objective of this chapter, that is translating managerial decision statements into relevant research objectives. In the last video, I talked about situation analysis where a researcher gets familiarized with the research situation. The situation analysis ends when researcher has a very clear idea about the managerial objectives. So decision statements captures these objectives in a way that invites multiple solutions. However, once the situation analysis is done, researcher is very clear about the objectives and the multiple solutions. Now the researcher need to write down a very clear research objective. Okay, the research objective is the purpose of the research. Research objective is the reason the research is being conducted. So in this stage, researcher must write down very clear, very actionable research objective. The research objective should be written in such a way so that researchers start visualizing that what needs to be measured, what type of a study it's going to be. Research objective is also known as deliverables of the research project from the outside researcher's point of view. That means if a research organization is hired to do a research, then research objective is known as deliverables for them, because this is what they need to deliver. This is what they need to be delivered to the organization that have hired them. Let's take an example. A situation where a 22-year-old neighborhood swimming association seeks research help. Okay, now the researcher go to that swimming association and find some symptoms. For example, declining membership for 6 years, increased attendance at new water park, and less frequent usage among members. So after the situation analysis, researcher find these symptoms. Now, according to the stages that we are discussing, once these symptoms are found out, the researcher writes down the probable problem. Okay. So what's the problem could be? Swim facility is outdated and does not appeal to younger families. Younger families and children have a negative image of pool, and their old market is aging. So as we discussed in the last video as well as in this video, that from these symptoms, researcher will write down multiple problem statements and alternative solutions. And from these problems, the researcher need to write down a decision statement. Decision statement, if you can remember, we discussed in the last video, the decision statement is a key research question researcher needs to answer. So what is the key research question here? What things can be done to energize new markets and create a more favorable attitude toward the association? So that's a key research question. Now, once this decision statement is written, next stage is to write down a very clear research objective. So I have put some more situations. If you manage some time, you can go through them. So that will give you some practice. So once this decision statement is done, this decision statement needs to be translated into a research objective. Okay, I'm giving you some time to think about the research objective. Then I will come back to this point. In this stage, we also need to determine our unit of analysis. Unit of analysis means who will be our source of data. That means the data that we need to be collected from which unit. Will it be individuals like customers, employees, or owners? Should our data be collected from households like families, extended families? Whether organizations like businesses or business units will be provider of data? Whether it will be departmental data like sales, finance, or so forth, or geographical areas. So we need to determine what will be our unit of analysis, and sometimes it might be possible that we use multi-level analysis. We also need to understand what will be our variable. that will be used in our research. So in this stage, we should be very clear about the variables and the constant. Variable is something that varies. Variable is something that varies time to time, context to context, person to person, and so forth. For example, sales, income, age, rainfall, satisfaction, salary, so on. Then what is constant? Constant is something that doesn't change. Constant is something that doesn't vary context to context or person to person. Researcher is not very interested about constant because since constant doesn't change, it is unlikely to having any impact on the research issue. Researcher is interested about variable because it changes, so it's likely to have impact on the research issue. There are different types of variables: continuous variable, categorical variable, dependent variable, and independent variable. Continuous variable and categorical variable is one classification, and dependent variable and independent variable is another classification. Continuous variable is a one that takes values within a very large range, whereas categorical variable is the one that takes a value within a very small range. Okay, let's take some example. Continuous variable, as I said, that it takes any values within a very large range. For example, if you take salary, it can take any value within a large range. If you say income level, if you say rainfall or age of a customer, so these are examples of continuous variable. Whereas categorical variable takes only few values or only take a value within a very small range. For example, gender, marital status, whether satisfied or unsatisfied. So these are examples of categorical variable. Then dependent variable and independent variable. Dependent variable is the one that is dependent on some independent variables, whereas independent variable is one that influences dependent variable. So let's take some examples. As I said, the dependent variable is the one that depends on independent variable. Let's say that employee satisfaction depends on level of salaries. So employee satisfaction is a dependent variable and salary is an independent variable. Employee satisfaction dependent variable because it depends on salary, and salary is an independent variable because it influences employee satisfaction. Customer satisfaction depends on price of the product. So customer satisfaction is a dependent variable and price is an independent variable. Okay, so it's very important that we understand what type of variable we are using, because different variable will lead us to use different statistical techniques. So this is the end of this video, and we will be talking about learning objective 4 in the next video. Thank you.